Radio. I have Dr. Chapa with Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center here in studio. I'm going to kick this on the FM. I believe today we're going to be talking about mental health, which is a very important topic. Go ahead and share this out. Let us know if you have any questions. I'm going to kick this on the FM right now. Here we go. Good morning. This is KHEA Radio 99.5 FM. My name is Gardy, and I have Dr. Chapa in studio based in
I thought you
Leaky
just
City.
forgot my name for a second. That was like almost funny. I was going to be like,
Dr. Chester.
Chester Chapa. That would be awesome. So, well, good morning, Gardy. How art thou?
I'm doing good. I'm firing on all cylinders. Definitely did not forget your name. I don't think I ever could, even if I wanted to.
Just giving you a hard time. But it was funny because something got delivered to the house the other day, and it said Chopper on it.
Dr. Chopper.
Chopper.
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I said, look, Chop. Somebody's buying us a chopper.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, it's just an awfully small box, so I don't think we're going to be able to fit inside of that thing. But, yeah, man, good morning. I'm glad to be here with you, as usual. And, it's a glorious day. I mean, we had that little spat of rain yesterday, but it was gorgeous all day. Like, it was hard to work. I had a great day at the office, but, I mean, it was so pretty outside. I wanted to be outside working in the beautiful elements of the sunshine and the spring-like weather. No, I wasn't. But I did go home, and it was still light outside, which was a rarity. And I think that's a cool thing. You know, we're going into the spring, and, coming out of winter, we have a lot of folks, that suffer with seasonal depression. They suffer with, aspects of anxiety, and they have, challenges in the way their mind works with thoughts. I mean, whether it's, I would even say to the extreme of ADD, ADHD, where they have the sense of overwhelm that drives anxiety, all the way to their mind shutting down, and they kind of go into that depressed state. And there's so many aspects of what we do at Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center that help patients work through mental illness, mental challenges. And, just because you have a thought of anxiety doesn't mean you have anxiety. Okay. Just because you have a day, like a moment throughout your day where you feel a little bit overwhelmed or depressed, doesn't mean that you're overwhelmed or depressed. It's a moment where you've got to process, and it goes back to kind of how we talk about the immune system. It's not if you get sick, it's when you get sick and how your body responds to the illness, the bug, the attack. And sometimes we know spiritually, the battlefield of the mind, it's where we are all facing mountains of challenge and obstacles that keep us from being our best each and every day. That moment of your willingness to get up out of bed today and tackle the day and seize the day. And what is it? Carpe diem, charge, we got to go get them. And we have to remind ourselves that we've got to build ourselves up day in and day out. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, biochemically, structurally, we got to make sure that our system is running on all 8 cylinders, like you said earlier. Didn't it feel good? Like, tell me what it feels like for you to run on all 8 cylinders.
It just feels right. I guess whenever you're not running on all 8 cylinders, that's whenever it's most noticeable and you miss it. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And it could be you just have a lot going on that could kind of derail you. You could have big deadlines coming up that could knock you off the trail. And I'm doing some study around keeping God the focus of everything that I do in my life. No matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, no matter how busy I am, no matter how at peace I am, no matter how many to-dos that have to be done that are what we call important and urgent, or the little crop-up fires that come out of the blue like curveballs and kind of distract us from what we're trying to do. I love that scripture that says, "Be of good cheer." Give thanks, pray without ceasing, for this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. Like, we have to constantly keep that as the forefront And then everything else we make line up to that from a spiritual perspective. And everything that we do through nutrition and how the biochemistry works should affect our emotional state, should affect how we feel physically, how we feel structurally and mentally, so that we can go forth and tackle the day, and for everything, as you said, to just be right. And when you wake up with a headache, that is a sign that things aren't right. When you wake up and your first breath is, oh, what a nice night. Oh, my gosh, I got a lot to do today, right?
Yeah.
That anxiety, that feeling of heaviness that sets on you, we have to navigate that, because how did we sleep last night affects your mental health. It affects your anxiety overload threshold. If you tip the scale the wrong way, boom, anxiety pops up. And so we've got to make sure that how we sleep is important. Did we get enough hours of sleep? Are we have to assess our sleep. Are we waking up during the night to sleep, to pee or to toss and turn or to stare at the ceiling or have a wicked, wild, bizarre, funky, exotic dream that keeps us in that light sleep state where we're not truly getting into deep sleep healing states. We've got to assess our nutrition. What are we eating day in and day out? If people don't realize that there are 3 million more neurotransmitters in the GI tract than there is in the brain. And neurotransmitters are brain hormones, brain chemicals that help you feel like everything is just right, that those cylinders are firing on all 8 cylinders, so that you feel your best at every moment throughout the day. I met a gentleman yesterday that is brain turns off at 4:00 in the afternoon every day. He's got to get it all done before 4, and he's under 45. And how do we navigate that? I mean, because he says that does create anxiety. He's got a deadline of 4 p.m. To get everything done. That means he's got to start his day right every day. He's got to make sure that he's pushing because he's this is how he's navigated his world, and which to his work ethic has probably paid him dividends. I mean, he's done with his work day by 4. But what more does God have in store if we could get him healthy and running from morning till night? Not necessarily to pack more busy in, but to help him feel like everything is right. And those anxiety feelings, those deadline pressures, those thoughts that keep us from being our best, we can subdue those. So we need to look at the GI tract, and are your bowels moving day in and day out every day? I had a patient come in and say, that I said, did you have a bowel movement today? And they said, I think so. No, there's no thinking. Like, you either did or you didn't. I'm like, okay, so you didn't. And now we have a conversation because it's 1:00 in the afternoon. That means you've been toting around yesterday's trash for several hours throughout the day. And how is the body to manage yesterday and today in preparation for tomorrow? It might seemingly get overwhelmed, and I would look at the anxiety, depression it's like a sign that we've bankrupted something. There's a tax, there's a toll that didn't get paid, a fee that didn't get paid, and now there's a penalty. And if we can take some of those penalties, those burdens off of the psychology, if we can improve digestive function, if we can improve sleep, your tolerance through the day, whether you're prepared for everything because it's just one of those days and everything's just right, or you just get a bunch of curveballs and you're like, man, I'm still hitting base hits, I'm still getting into the outfield, I'm still hitting a home run or two, and life is still working for you because your body, when faced with the challenge, rose up and it got it done. And I think that is a really awesome place to be. So we always start with digestion. We start with biochemistry in the gut because there are so many microbiology, ecology, good bugs, good yeast, bad yeast. Your body has a synergistic has a synergistic relationship with what we call the gut bugs, the gut biome. And when we have kids starting into the world on stomach acid reducing drugs because they're colicky, we are starting that child with a basically a digestive disruption. Their ability to break down food is altered, therefore their digestive healing begins to slow down. And an infant, when we start, so I'm going to basically kind of make the statement that many of our mental illness issues, I think, can start even at infancy, and because we're over-medicated or we're inflamed at the gut level. And so when we're dealing with mental illness, we have to make certain the GI tract is healthy, strong, mighty, and valiant, right? Lady, come in yesterday. Anxiety, depression is number one psychological symptoms with a side of irritable bowel syndrome. What is irritable bowel syndrome? When the anxiety threshold tips and the anxiety rises up, the bowels valves open and things move too fast and people get loose stool. And that can be an urgent loose stool. That could be an inconvenient loose stool. And those are things that are indicators that there is a problem, in the way the body's managing stress, inflammation, and something as simple as food. I mean, you're in a bad place when the food that you eat begins to inflame you or feed the fiery inflammation that is within you. And so we have to look at, so not only can mental illness cause, me psychological stress, right? It can also cause digestive stress. It can alter how our body is taking in biochemical information from food in order to build on and build into a productive day. And so we want to make sure that we start with how the day operates. What are we doing today? Because all of us that are listening, you're not an infant, so but you might have an infant at home, and if your child is on antibiotics, if your child is on stomach acid reducing drugs, we have an alternative. We have a tool. We have education to give you in order to help restore that baby's gut lining so that we can get healthy brain chemistry happening at the gut level. For us that are older and have been around the sun a few times, we might be dealing with an extension of what that little child is dealing with called leaky gut syndrome. And leaky gut syndrome is like little holes in the lining of your GI tract, and that those holes are penetratable to the blood, the lifeblood of our system. And the lifeblood is very, very important. Wouldn't you agree, Gardy?
I agree with you.
Yes.
Very important.
Yeah, very important. And we got to make sure that the lifeblood is protected, that the pH of the blood does not shift or change. And so we've got to make sure that proteins, undigested molecules from our food, carbohydrates, fats that are coming through the digestive tract are invited across the way God designed the digestive tract to bring nutrition into the body, not through leaks in the ship, not through holes in the fence. We don't want intruders, because if these molecular nutrients get in and they're not properly digested, they become a foreign invader and an inflammatory agent that could be either a spark or a log to an existing or maybe a soon-to-be fire that will run loose in your GI tract. And when that happens, the neurotransmitters get disrupted. And then your brain chemistry gets disrupted. And then if that continues, you start seeing the tipping of the scale where we go into anxiety and depression. And so we've got to be looking and go, whoa, that's a lot. But all from the GI tract. I mean, isn't it fascinating? You got 28 feet of intestinal lining And it should be number one discussed in any specialty of medicine. The first question out of every doctor's mouth should be, well, have you had a bowel movement today? Oh, you have. Oh, what time? Oh, was it hard? Was it soft? Was it loose? Was it liquid? What is happening in your GI tract determines how your overall health is going to be, your energy output, your stress management. But that psychological component is such a big deal. So when we look at the psychology, anxiety, depression, we look at also nutrients. What nutrients drive healthy brain chemistry? Do we jump straight to neurotransmitters like serotonin, acetylcholine, catecholamine, dopamine? No. We those are, yes, we address those things, but those are what we call upstream factors that we shouldn't have to worry about. We need to focus at the foundational, rudimentary level where we're putting in the right nutrients and the body formulates the need for which it carries in that moment in that day. So you should have healthy brain memory. Your short-term, long-term memory should be sharp using things like acetylcholine development. Well, that's good. Serotonin, that feeling of joy and like everything is right that you spoke of earlier, that should be something that is fed into from the foods that you're consuming day in and day out. And people want to go, well, which foods? I want to know the magic food, Gardy. Well, simply
Brussels sprouts.
It's vegetables.
Yeah.
You start with veggies. Are you eating 3 to 6 vegetables a day? The average American's consuming less than 3 to 4 a week. And we have to go in and go, oh, no wonder there's nutritional deficiencies causing mental illness. Nutritional deficiencies. We're not eating enough vegetables. Oh, but I don't like vegetables. What's there not to like? They taste like anything that you spice them with. Where could we start? Where's a good place to start? What's your favorite veggie? Let's see if we can tie it into brain health.
Yesterday I had asparagus. It was good.
Now, what if I said, Gardy, I don't like asparagus. It has a weird curly top.
That's the best part. It's the top.
I know. I know.
But it does. Yeah.
But what if I told you I didn't like it? How would you help me to even be willing to try this dreaded stick of curliness?
I'd probably cook it in butter, and then you could add some of the Himalayan pink salt. And you also have a bunch of seasonings that I've gotten from you. I have a mango. I believe it's like a mango habanero that I got from your office.
Oh, so good, isn't it?
Yeah, it has like some better ingredients in there.
So we could totally, I find that, and that's why we have this conversation around spices. I remember like my, 2 or maybe 40 detoxes ago, let's just give it. I got into spices real heavy because I realized that vegetables really just take on the flavor of whatever you spiced it with. So cooking asparagus, for example, in butter could supply healthy nutrients for your body to assimilate or to build the necessary neurotransmitters for healthy brain development. So there's no magic in the veggie, in the specific food but we do need it to be vegetables. Like we need to start with veggies. Are we getting enough vegetables? Let's assess that. Let's document that this week. Let's look at how many vegetables did I eat today? How many did you eat yesterday? And start there, because when you start assessing things, you can hold yourself accountable to things. You can say, oh, I only had 1 vegetable yesterday, and of that, I only had 1, spear of asparagus, and you really needed 8. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you could try the asparagus wrapped in bacon. My mom would wrap green beans in bacon as a kid, and she would put a little dollop of ketchup and bake them. And you're thinking, but you said there's 4 deadly food additives, and the ketchup's got one of those. Yeah, I know. But in the beginning, we want to introduce you to ideas to get it in. And they do sell ketchups, by the way, that don't have high fructose corn syrup. They have ketchups that don't have artificial sugars in it. So there are other alternatives. There's other dressings, that you could put instead of the ketchup. Maybe you don't like ketchup. Or maybe tomatoes irritate your tummy because you already got an intestinal fire. I saw a gentleman last week, and when he first came in 3 years ago, he always had acid reflux, and we found it to be from tomato sauces, tomato paste, and tomato-based things like ketchup. He could have a tomato, tomatillo, a yellow heirloom, one of these beautiful, lush tomatoes, but he couldn't consume the processed versions of them. So in that case, we would switch. Maybe we put a dollop of, one of these heavy fat keto dressings, and we put a little dollop of that wrapped in bacon, and now you got bacon-wrapped asparagus, bacon-wrapped green beans with your favorite little dollop of creamy keto dairy-free dressing on top. You're like, whoa, that's an idea. You could air fry those. You could bake those. You could, there's ways, right? And I think we just got to start getting back to, all right, well, I don't really like veggies, but how can I make it taste better and still avoid some of the 4 inflammatory foods like wheat, dairy, corn, and soy? How can I avoid some of the 4 deadly food additives that cause disruption in the digestive tract, that penetrate across that leaky barrier, that leaky gut, that drive inflammation in the blood, that stress out and inflame the brain and create your mental illness? So you're like, but I'm so anxious, Chop, that, just hearing you talk about it gives me anxiety. I understand. So it goes back to nutritional deficiencies. We don't have the mental breaks in place. So at Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center, we're going to sit down and we're going to assess your mineral load. So if somebody said, well, I'm so anxious, I can't even think about how to get creative in the kitchen, even with your, fancy spices. And I'm like, okay, so that just means that your brain's running too fast towards the metaphoric cliff, and you're getting anxiousness, just thought of change. And so we would come in and support the change. And that leads to, into the mineral conversation. We're going to come in and we're going to put minerals in to your body to calm the mind, to settle the mind, so that the mind isn't racing rapidly through the day, faster than the day's coming at you, and you're having to have a excessive amount of comprehension and processing speed in order to handle all of it. And we can do that simply through calcium magnesium balance. We can do that through sodium potassium balance, and we will see that the mental anxiousness that people are dealing with, because what we oftentimes see, I had this patient tell me yesterday, I feel like I'm handling the stress better. Like, I'm not where I want to be, it's not that I'm not stressed, she said. It's just that I feel like I handle it better. When I first came, I had headaches, and then I had anxiety, and I had hormone problems, and my cycle was all off, and and we found that it was GI with this patient, and we fixed the GI tract, and now she told me yesterday she handles most of her health complaints with food. She goes back and looks at, well, how many of the 4 inflammatory foods is she eating? Milk, wheat, soy, corn, right? If you're putting in these inflammatory logs on the fire, you're going to have mental stress. It's going to inflame the blood. It's going to inflame the gut lining. And when the gut lining is inflamed or penetratable, because it's so inflamed that it's actually got little holes in it and things are leaking across the membranes, they get in and inflame in the blood. And when the blood is inflamed, now you got this like river of fire, lava, and I'm pretty sure that's not good, especially when it starts hitting brain tissue. And I've heard it said many a time. I've read it thousands of times. I heard it taught, over and over again in a lecture in class, that when you have a leaky digestive barrier, you have a leaky brain barrier. That means that that lava has the ability to bypass the protective brain fence and get into the brain and wreak havoc on your brain chemistry. And now we're having a direct organ dysfunction. And that brings us to, organ dysfunction is another key in how we address mental illness. We address food and minerals and vitamins. We want to make sure that the body is, getting adequate veggies and healthy fats, But we've got to also appreciate that when people come in and they are overwhelmed and they are stressed and they are to the point of anxiety and depression, that maybe there's damage, inflammation, injury to brain tissue. Now, the great news about the brain is the brain really wants two things to be healthy. It wants food, so fuel. So when you think food, you think fuel. And it wants stimulation. Well, we could all agree that we're probably getting stimulated enough, and we lack the nutrition in order to handle the stimulation. But what if the brain has a glitch in and of itself because of fire in one of the cortices, or in the way that the little synaptic electrical impulses move throughout the brain? That's an organ dysfunction. What can we do there? We would get in and actually feed the brain Miracle-Gro. We would teach you, all right, let's find a way to stimulate brain health through supplementation, or through weight-bearing exercise, or through gentle walking, or stretching, or isometrics, where we're doing hold positions to activate muscles. It's amazing what good, healthy blood flow can do to wash the brain. And then when we look at organ dysfunction, we also we look at the brain and go, oh well, maybe the brain needs more RNA, ribonucleic acid, and that is one of your transcription factors inside of the nuclei of a cell, way down deep in there, and we can rewrite the code so that your brain builds a healthy cell again, and we can begin to exercise through stimulation these pathways, whether it's through colored lens therapy, eye exercise therapy, head mobility exercises, in order to activate that that repair process to set. It's like letting concrete set well. We can give you the food to feed the brain, and then the brain's going to heal and repair, and now we've got to retrain it and stimulate it, because it has to do a little work around a detour, if you will, around the old damaged tissue, and the body can relearn a new skill. It can relearn or reinvigorate an old skill that used to work for you but got disrupted through some sort of blood inflammation burn. That's when the pH of the brain gets too acidic, and the blood is too acidic, and we see this inflammation happening. This is causing brain organ dysfunction. It could be that downstream, that the intestinal lining is damaged, like we were talking about earlier. If it's got holes in the intestinal lining, we have to repair that, and we repair that, one, through food allergy observation. We observe that through nutritional deficiencies, making sure that you have adequate essential fatty acids, that you have adequate fat-soluble vitamins, and the gut and the brain are critical in needing loads and loads of B vitamins. And your body should be manufacturing these B vitamins, but so many people today are eating so few good quality calories that their body is running out of it's got this organ dysfunction that is not allowing proper function, where your body's manufacturing the B vitamin. And if the body's ability to manufacture B vitamins is low, that affects every cell in your body. And that is something that we have to address, because that means that your output energy at the mitochondria is in the tank. And so you're seeing a dip in energy cellular output. And if you have a dip at the cellular output level, well, that means that your body is going to prioritize external output. That's you on the job. That's you in school. That's you with your family, in order to take care of internal, more important survival tactics: heart function, liver function, lung function, basic, bowel function, kidney function. And when these organs start taking priority, your energy output your mental status output begins to decline. And in time, just like that gentleman I was telling you about that his brain turns off at 4 p.m., now, it goes from 8 to 5 and then 5 to 4. And just because you're tired at the end of a day doesn't mean you have mental illness. Tired and anxiety are two different things. I always associate tiredness is relieved with rest, with sleep. And so if we can get good sleep and we wake up feeling refreshed the next morning, well, that's a sign that you put in a good hard day's work and you're a little bit tired at the end of the day, and that's normal, circadian rhythm. That's a normal day-to-day flow. And I know none of us want to be human sometimes. We want to just go time all the time. But we know that that's not how the system works. As much as we know about sleep, we know that sleep, we really don't know a lot about why sleep is so beneficial to the body, other than we can see growth hormone levels change. We can see the recovery cycles improve. We can see the brain feeling more alive and alert and more creative and more powerful in the early morning hours after you've gotten a good 6, 7.5, or 9 hours of sleep. And if you, that's another area I believe we need to be assessing when we're looking at mental health, is we want to look at the overall sleep. So we've talked about mineral or a vitamin, mineral, essential fatty acid, nutritional dysfunction, like a deficiency that can cause mental health issues. We just talked a little bit about actual damage, organ dysfunction, where the brain is inflamed, the digestive tract is inflamed. And now we're looking at, a lifestyle practice, a sleeping cycle. Are we able to get down deep into sleep as a, third component of the mental health triad? Are we able to get into that deep enough sleep, and are we getting enough of that deep enough sleep in order to get the necessary recovery so that the brain can fight back when overwhelm approaches, when anxiety kicks, when depression sets in, right?
Yes. Dr. Chapa, what are you drinking? I was wondering earlier.
I had a feeling you were going to ask. Mm-hmm. And what this is a shake that I use from my office, and it supports all of these aspects that we're talking about. The first powder that I put in this, it's actually in a cup of almond milk and a cup of ice. That's the two liquid sources. But it's 2 scoops of Inflammaforce, which is a great anti-inflammatory for the brain. Oh, did I do that on purpose, or do I do this as a daily practice? I do it as a daily practice. It de-inflames the blood. We just talked about how important our lifeblood is. And what do you think the last part that we've talked about today that we might be de-inflaming and improving?
I was going to say something about the lifestyle, but I'm not sure what it is.
28 feet.
Oh, your organs?
Your intestines specifically, yes.
Okay.
And so this shake, the Inflammaforce, is one of my favorite morning shakes, and it's a way to set the day right. And it has all your vitamins, 95% of the amino acid profile of mother's milk. It's got all kinds of key nutrients to help decrease inflammation in the brain, blood, and GI tract. So I'm improving brain function, de-inflaming and cleansing the blood, and I'm improving absorption in the GI tract. I also throw in here Gut Force, which is glutamine, 4,000 milligrams of glutamine, which seals and heals that leaky gut. Dr. Chapa, you have a leaky gut? No, but I'm also maintaining my body. I change my air filters, rotate my tires. I want to make sure I get that oil, changed so that my car lasts longer. This is my vehicle. This is my earth suit. I want to make sure that I maintain it properly so that when I wake up every day, not only did I get a good night's sleep, and I can depend on the sleep rest recovery cycle to be in place, I'm doing my due diligence to make sure that the nutrient density is where I need to be. And then I throw in a little bit of my favorite, Greens Mocha. It's 21 servings of fruits and vegetables packed in a powder. It's a very nutritive drink, and it's very easy to get. Now, so I do this every morning, and normally Yeah, I'm just a little behind schedule today because kids being on spring break gave me a different morning this particular day that I normally have when they're in school. So, but this is one of my meals that I have in the early morning hours. I eat heavy in the morning, and it sporadically lightens up towards the end of the day, and try to cut off meals before 8 or 6 p.m., and so that I get some of that aspect of intermittent fasting where I'm eating inside of a window of time, giving my body, digestive repair, recovery, rest. I'm actually resting the GI tract at the later stage of the day, as opposed to priming it early in the day, so that I can fuel power and and thrill through the day. I want to make sure that I have that vim, vigor, and vip to go through the day with abundance and electrical impact, so it can help as many people, conversate with as many people, and manage as many fires as I have to deal with day in and day out, just like everybody else. And so I think one of the areas where mental health is concerned and anxiety and depression are concerned is we're also starving. We're not eating enough fuel calorie-wise, and because the calories that we're putting in are empty calories. They're nutrient devoid. Bernard Jensen and Mark Anderson wrote a book called The Empty Harvest, and The Empty Harvest speaks to this abundance of food that we eat, this plethora of options that we have at our fingertips, but how it is nutrient deprived. Going back to nutritional deficiencies causing anxiety, depression. Well, if you have enough nutritional deficiencies, you can create organs to malfunction. If the organs malfunction, you can get anxiety, depression, and you can have a brain or an organ dysfunction. Like, let's just say we go in a different door we haven't tapped into yet, but we keep the triad. So if you visualize a triangle in your mind's eye, the top of the triangle could be anxiety, depression. The bottom right would be nutritional deficiencies, and the bottom left would be organ dysfunction. And if the organ is malfunctioning, it could disrupt the nutritional density, which could affect your stress and your anxiety and depression. If the organ itself is malfunctioned, then you can see anxiety and depression as a result therein. If we look at stress, I used the word stress a moment ago. So we came in the adrenal gland doorway. That's organ dysfunction. And I have yet to meet, we were talking yesterday at our clinical meeting in the morning about how powerful the adrenal glands are, that you can't live without your adrenal glands. You can have a thyroid removed and still live, interestingly, because they can manage that, but they haven't figured out how to manage the adrenal glands going missing. So anytime they've ever taken them out of a rat study, gerbil study, they have found that the animal dies. Why? Because the adrenal glands manage so many vital processes. I mean, as simple as the light that is coming in through your window right now and your pupils dilating is controlled by your adrenal glands. Isn't that amazing? Your adrenal glands are your number one stress management organ or gland, and they are the first gland developed in utero, in the womb, whenever you are swimming around in mama's tummy. Isn't that fascinating? And so the adrenal glands are absolutely a critical part to play in anxiety and depression. When the adrenal glands are overloaded, when they are overworked, you start to find symptom patterns where you're short-fused towards anxiety, depression. Your hormones are going to be a little bit more wonky. You're going to find that your body's more in this fight-or-flight response day in and day out. And when you're in that fight or flight response day in more often than not, you're redlining. If you think of the RPM meter on your car and you see those, what does it mean if you're in the red? Not good. That means you're putting stress on the motor.
I was going to say on audio, yeah, and the red is not good. I guess if you're revving it up too much, it goes all the way to the red. It's like you need to switch gears, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we are not running in the red, because that could stress our body out beyond measure. But what if your adrenal glands are dysfunctional and a kiss from your spouse, a simple test, a deadline coming up, puts you into a fight or flight response where you're about to bolt and your system is, overloaded and overwhelmed, and you're struggling to figure out, how to manage your day. Like simple to-dos that you should be able to take care of on your own seem daunting. seem overwhelming. And that's another sign that it can be not just your digestive tract that could be dysfunctional. It could be your brain, not just your brain that's injured or damaged in some capacity. It could be the stress from the environment and stress in the biochemistry that's causing the adrenal glands to manage your world perceptively in an inappropriate way. Your blood pressure's running too high, too low. You're getting dizzy spells. You're getting heart palpitations. Well, those things in and of themselves cause people anxiety. When people start feeling symptoms that they know aren't right, because, when you haven't lived with these symptoms and then they come on and you go, ooh, that what was that? That's weird. Oh, give me a second. I got to kind of process that, and you're like, what happened? I just got really dizzy. Or I feel this, this kind of flip-flop in your chest, this little bit of weird, heart dysregulation. That is an indicating factor that something in the organ part of the triad that drives mental health issues like anxiety and depression, like we're talking about today, is breaking down. I mean, you wouldn't want your heart to not be pumping out enough nutrition, to a lack of nutrition to the brain, right? So you could have a heart that's dysfunctional. And now all of a sudden you've got, we've talked about how heart can affect the brain, the adrenal glands can affect the brain itself can affect the brain, and the digestive tract can affect the brain. And so we've got to make sure that we come in to look at vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids. B vitamins drive mitochondrial function. So we put people on food-based B vitamins. We put people on methylated B vitamins in order to bypass some of their organ dysfunctions. So if the organs are broken, we can still support the brain or support the body and get the body back on track and reverse engineer the organ dysfunction. Isn't that cool? Mm-hmm. And I just find nutrition so fascinating because the same way that your body breaks down, we can rebuild it. And how your body breaks down may be different than your neighbor or your family member. And so we can help many different signs and symptoms like anxiety, depression, and find that the door we went into with Sally Sue was through adrenals, but we went through this other with little Johnny through his GI tract, or we went and we supported the elderly through the actual brain restoration protocols. We can come in and reverse engineer and feed the body and drive health in directions and nudge it according to the symptom patterns that the body presents itself with. So when a person comes into Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center, we're going to sit down and we're going to analyze their health patterns, their symptom patterns, and we're going to listen and assess where they are on what we call the toxicity questionnaire spectrum. How many toxins are they carrying? How many burdens are they carrying? That extra weight that they're carrying, that mental stress load, that hormonal dysregulation, that digestive glitch. I mean, we can see so much, and we can what we start noticing is there's patterns that show up. And when the patterns show up, we can go and support the pattern of weakness. So if the patterns in the symptom land point to the adrenal glands or point to the GI tract or point to the brain, we could go and assess and support the brain, the GI tract, or the adrenals accordingly. And that gives the body fuel for that particular weakness, and we buy time in teaching the person how to eat better and how to choose better and de-inflame their diet day in and day out through breakfast and snack ideas. I mean, I can't tell you how many patients we've been able to restore just by getting them to snack right and to eat breakfast right. And that's good news. I mean, because it shouldn't be hard, and it really isn't when you just get started. The hardest part is getting started. And that's why we encourage people, just come on in. Let us help you. Let us serve you. Let us be your external hard drive for a little bit. Let us be your nutrition wellness coach. We want to be your number one health and wellness resource for every aspect of your personal life and your family.
Yeah, I want to know who's snacking right. Who is snacking right or thinks that they are snacking right?
Well, I'm snacking right because that shake is awesome. So, Inflammaforce Gut Force in Greens 8,000. You're getting 21 servings of fruits and vegetables packed in a powder. You're getting the glutamine to seal and heal the gut lining to maximize the absorption. And you're getting the inflammation de-stressor for the brain, for the blood, and for your GI tract. I mean, wow. That should be like a daily. You know what I mean? And if you're active, it should very much be a daily. Meaning, if you're actively training, like I can see that you've got some road rash or mat rash on your cheeky, and so I would say that you're training harder than you've trained in a while, and you may need extra gusto to make sure that the healing and recovery paths are in place. But if you've got disease already in the form of anxiety, depression, that is a sign that the body's wearing out in other areas, and we can come in and support these nutritional deficiencies and support these organ, down-regulating areas and build them back up. And when you build these areas back up, it builds back your tolerance. So when stress comes, because it's coming, and remember, it's not about avoiding it. It's about navigating it when it approaches. Are you able to sidestep and deflect some of it? Are you able to pass some of it through, assistance and management of so many to-dos to other helpers in your world that are either paid to or willing to help and serve alongside you? And when we have these tools at our side, and we have the mental fortitude to know when we need to call on our family lifelines or our friendly lifelines or our social circle lifelines, I think that is a really powerful place to be. I called on a friend this morning. I reached out to Molly. I was like, I just need to talk through some of the thoughts racing through my mind right now because I have so much I want to share. And I find oftentimes that I get off on rabbit trails and tangents and people don't know where we're going. But I want people to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that are suffering with anxiety and depression that there's an answer. And Living Well has an answer and a tool for you. And we will teach you and help you navigate those things so that you're not feeling the blues. You're not feeling the stress. You're not feeling the day crash or close in on you. Because that is in and of itself daunting and overwhelming and frustrating and agitating. What if you could tackle all those same things that normally cause your body stress and degeneration with a little bit more grace, with a little bit more tolerance, with a little bit more bounce, spring in your step, where that vim, vigor, and vip is showing and radiating to all your friends, family, and loved ones? Yes, please. Can we say yes and amen? Can we get a hallelujah and make sure that everybody recognizes that that's possible? It's your life, it's your health, it's your choice. And I think that is where we get into finding tools at our level, the flesh level, the world physical level, and what we're doing to take care of this temple. What's my favorite scripture? Romans 12:1. I beseech thee, therefore, brethren, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. You remember, God didn't ask us to be extraordinary, out of balance, in order to be healthy and strong. He wants a reasonable service presenting this body, laying it on the altar, maybe walking past that donut a time or two. Oh, that's stressful. No, that's inflammatory. We've got to find ways to put that into your day, into your week, so that you don't feel like you're being deprived all the time. But often, you've got to know, not often, always, this isn't always, nothing below your taste buds. Do you know what that means, Gardy? Nothing below the dopamine initial feeling of sweet on your tongue wants the sugar that you're putting in your mouth right this second. I just caught you eating that donut. Who was that? I know you're out there. And guess what? As you're sinking your teeth into that right now, your cells are going, no, don't do it. For the love of Pete, please, don't poison us again. And yet your taste buds, your dopamine receptors are saying, yes, I need instant gratification. I need that feeling of gusto. It will make all of the things in my life better if I just indulge one more bite. And there's this quarrel happening between the cells deep in your tissues saying, please, be good to us. And the taste buds saying, quiet, you will get what you get, and you won't throw a fit, although they do.
Is that the same thing that kind of happens whenever we overeat? Like we're full. I've eaten 4 slices of pizza, and it's like, oh, that was so good. I want to eat one more. Is it the same thing or a little different?
No, I think it's the same thing. It's still a dopamine a hit. Dopamine, if we break down 2 of our neurotransmitters, dopamine, again, these are brain chemicals, and serotonin. Serotonin is that long-term satisfaction. Dopamine is that I need and want now, and I'm not willing to wait. And so the desire for the extra slice of pizza or the extra vice of sugar or the extra whatever stimulant that you're going for, that is the dopamine cry. And it's in your brain, again, wanting stimulation, you have neural pathways that you have trained already. So you just have to retrain. Change your habits, change your life, change your thinking. We got to get some of these keystone habits in place so that you recognize when the temptation appears and you hear dopamine screaming, "Give it to me!" And you got to, but you've got to hear deep down the serotonin saying, "You know what's right. Choose wisely." And this is like the battle going on inside our cell tissues, and when we feed the right pathways often enough, with good thinking, with good prayer, with good food, with good rest, with good stress management, we are more easily able to suppress those instant desires of gratification that oftentimes lead us to the pit of despair, symptom land. It's 2 different paths. Which way are we going? Let's make sure that we're heading towards wellness. Let's make sure that we're heading towards vitality. Let's make sure that we're feeling our best day in and day out, and make sure that we're leaving symptom land behind. We don't want to get stuck in the anxiety trail. We don't want to get stuck in the depressive state that people find themselves in, where they just seem locked in and they're not productive members of society anymore. They need help. They need choice. And it could be, what if it's as simple as we start with a shake? As a matter of fact, I have a quick last story before we shut down today. I had a patient come in, depressed, anxious, suicidal. Take it up a notch. Oof, right? We fought tooth and nail because she was so overwhelmed with eating a vegetable that we had to leverage shakes and intermittent fasting. And that's how we pulled her through. We loaded her up on healthy fats, DHA, omega-3s and 9s. We, because she was intermittent fasting, we were actually de-inflaming her. We got her off the 4 food allergens: wheat, dairy, corn, soy. So then we would do shakes 3 times a day. And as long as she had 3 shakes or 2 shakes a day and a meal, and we made that meal better than it normally is, so we incorporated a vegetable, we incorporated a protein that she was okay with and on board with, but we avoided the necessary things to avoid, and we allowed in the necessary things to allow, and we put as many nutrients in as we could get in the form of healthy fats, which we just taught at our macro fats class, our macro fix class on the topic of fats, so that people understand how to make a better dent and difference in their diet day in and day out through healthy fat intake. Fat doesn't make us fat. Fat actually balances our blood sugar. Fat actually stabilizes our brain. It fuels our brain in many positive ways. And so recognizing that's was our gateway in through supporting the nutritional deficiencies this girl had and de-inflaming the organs so that they could heal again that she had, that was driving her anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. we were able to come in and see restoration. And I remember after about 6 months, she goes with tears in her eyes because she just didn't want to say it out loud because it's been a voice in her head for 20 plus years of suicide. She said for the first time in her 20 some odd years, she hasn't had a suicidal thought. She got into activities. She got into goat yoga where the goats walk on your back. She got into roller derby. She got into rock climbing. She got into these different activities now that she had more energy because her brain was de-inflamed. And by the way, I had her on the Inflammaforce. I had her on the Gut Force. I had her on this exact shake, several times a day. And I'm not saying, magic shake. It's just one area that pushes the inflammation down and de-inflames key areas of the body. If I only have, a big rock to use, I got to make sure I use it wisely. And that's what we do at Living Well. We're going to help you prioritize what your big rocks are that are going to make it easier for you to make one more healthy decision today regarding your health, your life, your choices, and make sure that we're doing that consistently day in and day out in order to see you through to your promised land and where your body can feel better, live better, and be better one bite at a time. And at Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center, we desire to be on your team, and we desire to get in the trenches with you, and we desire to serve and love you back to ideal health. And it just takes time. It isn't always easy. But guess what? You have a team, you have a tribe, you have a people that believe in you and want the best for you, and that's what we're going to see manifest as we go forward when serving people as you send in your friends and family and loved ones. So we have a class coming up on just this very topic, brain health, how to overcome depression and anxiety. And it's at our office, and we want to invite you. We want to invite your friends, family, and loved ones to this class. And you're going to learn a great deal of cool tools on how to leverage your brain chemistry to be its best so that your body can outperform the stress of anxiety and outwit the spirit of depression so that your body is feeling better day in and day out. So we encourage you to tune in to all of our classes live through Zoom, on the radio here where we're teaching live today, or in our podcast. And I'll give you an opportunity, Gardy. Tell these wonderful listeners where they can go back and resubscribe to the Living Well podcast.
So you can go through Spotify, you can go through Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you get a podcast, you can search Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center, search Dr. Aaron Chapa, search Just Live Well, it'll come up. Make sure that you go and subscribe. You can download that, listen later, or you can just stream it straight from the internet. And I know a lot of y'all are because the numbers are just going through the roof. There's a lot of good content on there. Maybe you're subscribed. Share that with a friend. You can actually hit that little share with the arrow up. It's a box with the arrow. And then text it to a friend and say, hey, this may change your life. And maybe it will. I believe it will.
I believe it will too. And I hope that you guys have a blessed and wonderful day. And this is Living Well Clinical Nutrition Center signing out. We'll see you next week.